He is an old buffoon who should be rotting in a prison cell. And if Rand Paul has his way, I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen to Anthony Fauci, because here he was Friday, on the very day that they announced that Fauci had COVID. Here's Rand Paul just grilling the hell out of him on vaccine misinformation.
Dr. Fauci, the government recommends everybody take a booster over age 5. Are you aware of any studies that show reduction in hospitalization or death for children who take a booster?
Right now, there's not enough data that has been accumulated, Senator Paul, to indicate that that's the case.
There are no studies on children showing a reduction in hospitalization or death with taking a booster. If I give you 10, or if I give a patient 10 mRNA vaccines and they make protein each time, or they make antibody each time, is that proof that we should give 10 boosters, Dr. Fauci?
No, I think that is somewhat of an absurd exaggeration.
Well, that is the proof that you use. Your committees use that. That's the only proof you have to tell children to take a booster, is that they make antibodies. So it's not an absurdity. You're already at like 5 boosters for people. You've had, 2 or 3 boosters. It's like, where is the proof? Now, I think there is probably some indication for older folks that have some risk factors. For younger folks, there's not.
Rand Paul is really fantastic. We can bash on politicians all the time, and there's a short list of politicians I like, but he really is great, and he's got the chops when he's in those conversations, right? He actually is a doctor. What's incredible about that, now, first off, it came out that Fauci had COVID a little bit after that, but you can hear it in Fauci that he's obviously not feeling well. But we really need to think about this. The CDC is now recommending boosters basically for 5-year-olds. There is no evidence that it works, and Fauci's admitting it, and they're still pushing it. Do you realize how insane that is? 2.5 years after 2 weeks to flatten the curve, how completely insane it is. And Rand Paul continued to bash him on these lies and this misinformation when it comes to vaccinating kids.
And if you look at the data from Israel, the boosts, both the 3rd shot boost and the 4th shot boost, was associated with a clear-cut clinical effect, mostly in elderly people, but also as they gathered more data, even in people in the 40s and the 50s. So there is clinical data.
But not in children.
Well,
see, again, here's the thing is, you're not willing to be honest with the American people. So, for example, 75% of kids have had the disease. Why is the CDC not including this in the data? You can ask the question. You can do laboratory tests to find out who's had it and who hasn't had the disease. What is the incidence of hospitalization and death for children who've been infected with COVID, subsequently going to the hospital or dying? What is the possibility if your kid has had COVID, which is 75% of the country's had COVID, what is the chance that my child's going to the hospital or dying?
If you look at the number of deaths in pediatrics, Senator, you can see that there are more deaths
of people who have had it, of people who have had the disease.
Senator, we also know from other studies that the optimal degree of protection when you get infection is to get vaccinated after infection.
But you can't answer the question I asked. The question I ask is how many kids are dying and how many kids are going to the hospital who've already had COVID? The answer may be 0, but you're not even giving us the data because you have so much wanted to protect everybody from all the data because we're not smart enough to look at the data. When you released data earlier, when the CDC released the data, they left out the category of 18 to 49 on whether or not there was a health benefit for adults 18 to 49. Why was it left out? When critics finally complained, it was finally included because there was no health benefit from taking a booster between the 18 to 49 and the CDC study.
It's interesting. The government has all sorts of hearings all the time, and it's usually just like pure nonsense and theatrics, and nothing comes of any of it. But I thought this was important to show you because Rand Paul he's prosecuting him right there, right? He's prosecuting him, and eventually he'll be persecuting him because what he is saying, what Fauci is saying is, there is a study in another country, in this case in Israel, that 3rd and 4th booster shots for adults does something. And he gives you this sort of amorphous, it kind of does something for 40 and 50-year-olds. And Rand says, well, wait a minute. So this has nothing to do with kids? You have no numbers related to kids? And because of this study in another country from 40 to 50-year-olds, you now want to inject our kids even further. And Fauci's got nothing. He's got nothing. He is a criminal and a fraud. That's what Anthony Fauci is.